So, hi, I'm Rob Moody. I'm the Finance Director for the City of Independence, and this year the Budget Officer for the city's budget process. The budget process is laid out in ORS 294, local budget law, which basically prescribes the process that all cities and local governments in Oregon have to go through. It's a transparent public process. The public's involved at each step, and that provides the process, for lack of a better term, of how it all comes together. So there's 3 stages to the budget process. There's a proposed budget that is put together by staff based on some direction from council, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the process then, it calls for the proposed budget to be taken to the city's budget committee. The budget committee is made up of the city council and an equal number of appointed citizens. And those citizens and the council together become the budget committee. There's no hierarchy on that budget committee. They're all equal. So the council and the appointed citizens all have equal say in that process. So the budget committee then hears presentation of the budget message, and can ask questions, can deliberate on the budget as presented. They'll make some decisions, and then they pass it off once it's approved. So we go from a proposed budget to the approved budget, and then that approved budget goes to the council for adoption prior to the end of the current fiscal year. We have to have that budget adopted before June 30th in order to have authority to spend come July 1st. So the city gets its money really from a couple of major sources. We like to divide the city's operations into really 2 buckets. There's the general use bucket, general government bucket, and then there's the utilities funds. So the general use bucket is things like police, library, museum, administration, and those are primarily funded through property taxes and state shared revenues and fees and charges. So that's all unrestricted money for the most part. And then on the other side, the utilities get their monies from user charges, your water bill, your sewer bill, all of those things that come on your monthly utility bill. The utilities are intended to be self-supporting through those things. So all of the maintenance on the utility systems, all of the new construction, all of that stuff gets funded either directly or indirectly through those user charges. So when we think about property taxes and how they're divided up, so if you take your property tax bill that you get from the county, it gets divided up between a number of different jurisdictions. And think of it as kind of a pie where the city gets a share of those your property tax bill. So does the schools, so does the county, the fire district, etc. Those shares are determined based on some rates and allocations. And we each take our share, then the city takes their share, and that's what we have to work with for that upcoming fiscal year. We can't increase it, we don't get more than that, so we're forced by the resources available to us to live within our means, if you will. Ballot measures 5 and 50 placed a cap on property taxes of $10 per thousand for local governments, $5 per thousand for schools. Anything that cumulatively rises above that $15 limit is compressed back and results in a loss of revenue to the local government. As a result, we see this limitation on the growth of revenues to the city, assessed value of the properties within the city limits, is statutorily restricted to 3% per year, plus any new construction, while we see our expenses increase at an amount typically greater than 3%. Going back to how the city's budget really is adopted, we talked about those 3 stages and how it's driven by the council's policy and vision. Staff, as I mentioned, prepares and presents the proposed budget to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee can take public input. They can talk about it amongst themselves and deliberate on that. When they finally reach a conclusion and decide to approve the budget, in effect, they set the spending limits for the city for the next year, for that budget period. The council can't increase those spending limits. They can reduce them, but they can't increase them above about a 10%. I think there's a 10% limit on what they can do to increase. So the Budget Committee has a lot of authority and a lot of power in this process. They set those spending limits. They also set the tax levies through their approval process. Once it goes to the council, then the council can, again, deliberate, take public comment. There's a budget hearing that occurs. And understand they were part of the Budget Committee, so they have the benefit of that whole deliberation process that occurred at that level. They can, like I said, reduce the budget if they so choose. They can adopt it as approved, or they can make some minor changes. But really, once we go through all of that process, then we end up with an adopted budget as of June 30th that allows us then to carry on business effective July 1st. If a citizen wants to become involved in the process of the budget, there's a couple of routes really. You can come to the meetings. You can educate yourself on what the budget has, what the budget says and what's being presented. There's a copy of the budget available. The proposed budget will be available at City Hall in hard copy. It'll also be available on our website. So you can take a look at that, educate yourself on what's in there, and then come to the meetings, be part of that process that way, provide public input through those budget hearings. Or on a more formal basis, you could apply to become a member of the Budget Committee. Those applications can be submitted to the city, and as openings occur, then the council appoints citizens to that Budget Committee for a term of, I believe, 4 years.